Hey everybody, this is Matt with mathsmath.com. Thanks for joining us here today as we talk about adding and subtracting integers. We're in the Common Core Math standard of the number system, and we're going to be using our previous knowledge and understanding to add, subtract, and multiply and divide integers today. Alright, you ready? So our guiding question, by the end of the lesson you'll have this answered: how do you add and subtract integers? Now if you remember what integers are, they are the positive and negative counting numbers. So like -1, -2, -3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No fractions, no decimals, that's it. Okay, just integers. Alright, here is my son climbing up a big old rock there. We love to go rock climbing together as a family. And here he is climbing up. And if you think about it, climbing up as you go up would be adding, right? And as you go down, you're dropping down in altitude, that's subtracting. Now, what you're going to learn today is that when you go down, or when you subtract, it's the same thing as adding a negative. So when you add a negative number, it's the same thing as subtracting. So like right here, you're adding -1. Well, that's the same thing as subtracting 1. Okay? That's the big idea today when we talk about adding and subtracting integers. So let's do it. How do we do it? How do we deal with negative numbers? If you think about it, with adding positives and subtracting negatives, you're going to go up or to the right. When you're adding positives or you're subtracting negatives, you go up and to the right. And then if you're subtracting positives or you're adding negatives, you go down and to the left. All right? Let's talk about that. Let's keep going, all right? So, for example, x minus 6. Minus 6 means going down. Plus -6 is the same thing, actually. When you add a -6, it's the same thing as subtracting 6. So you're going down. Whereas going up would be +6, just like before, adding 6. If I say +6, just take it as adding 6. It's the same thing, just like here. -6 is the same thing as -6. It's also going up when you subtract a negative. Subtract a negative. If you ever see that in a problem where you've got that parentheses and the minus and then the negative, what I'm going to tell you to do is what I like to call a banana plus. You just take it, fill in the two negatives there, and now it looks like a banana plus. So now it's just x plus 6. Same thing we just had, right? So if you have two negatives, make them a banana plus. Getting hungry, aren't you? Hey, okay, additive inverse. This is a definition I'd like you to know. Additive inverse. You're taking something and adding the inverse, or the opposite of it. So think about it this way. It's a number added to another number that equals 0. A number added to another number equaling 0. So let's look at an example here. -1 plus 0. What plus -1 gives you 0? Well, x is called the additive inverse because I'm adding it to -1 and I get 0. That's what it's called, additive inverse. Well, -1 plus 1 is 0. Okay? What would you add to 1 to get to 0? Let's think about it the other way. What would you add to 1 to get to 0? Well, if we added -1 to 1 and got 0, if we add -1 to 1, we'll get 0. So the opposite basically is what you're looking at. The opposite of -1 is 1. You add those together, you get 0. Opposite of 1 is -1. Bam. Get it? Right? The additive inverse is just the opposite of that number. Pretty simple. All right. Inductive reasoning. Right, what we're going to talk about now is how, let's try and figure out some patterns when we're adding and subtracting integers. What patterns do we see? Can you make any general rules? Let's do it. Here it is. So we've got the -4 plus -6. Well, what type of integers do we have? We have both negatives, right? Negative there and negative there. What operation are we doing? We're adding. And what's going to be my answer? Well, -4 means up or down 4. Means down 4, and then adding -6. Remember, adding -6 is just like saying subtracting 6. So subtracting 6 is down 6 more. So if we go down 4, down 6, that gives us an answer of what? -10. Okay, -10. Bam. Now, -4, what types of integers do we have there? Well, we have both. What operation? We're adding. And then what's going to be my answer? -4, that means down 4, plus 6, that means up 6, gives us 2, right? Do this one. Hey, easy one, right? 4 plus 6, both positive. We're adding. And our answer, 10. All right, next one. 4 plus negative 6. Positive 4 means up 4. Negative 6 means down 6. Remember, plus and negative means minus. So if we're adding again, we're still adding. And my answer is negative 2. All right, let's look at this guy. We got negative 4, up or down 4, down 4, minus 6, down 6. All right. Notice we have different signs here because this is negative and what really is 6? 6 is positive. So we're going to have both signs there. We're subtracting. And our answer is negative 10, right? Down 4, minus 6 is down 6, gives us negative 10. What about this guy? Negative 4, up or down 4? Down, okay? Minus a negative. Remember what minus a negative means? Remember, banana plus it. Bam, okay? We had, this one was originally negative, and this one was also negative, so they are the same. They're both a negative. They're both negatives. And then we are subtracting. And my total, if this means down 4, and this does mean up 6, because remember, subtracting a negative means up, that puts us at 2. What about here? Up or down 4? Up or down 6? Well, they're both positive, right? And we are subtracting. And my answer is negative 2. All right, up or down 4? Minus negative 6. Remember, that's positive. Banana plus it all day. And we get 4 plus 6. Any patterns? Look over this. See what you can find. I would give you a hint there. Definitely look which ones are the same, like negative 10 and negative 10. Compare those two guys. And then 10 and 10. Compare those ones. All right, the negative 10s, you ended up having a negative and a minus, and this one you had a negative and a negative. So those really are the same equations. You get a negative 10 and a negative 10. So if they have the same symbol, you're just going to add them together. So like these ones are both negatives, just add 4 and 6, and that's 10, but make it negative. Whereas here you had a negative and a positive, so you're going to take the difference of them. Even though the addition sign is there, you're just going to still subtract the 2, okay? Here you've got a minus and a negative. Ultimately, those are really both the same thing. A minus and a negative are the same thing. So you're going to add them together, even though it's a subtraction symbol. They both have the same negative and a minus, and it becomes negative 10. Whereas something like this is positive, and ultimately that minus is a negative. So they're different. You subtract the 2, and you get negative 2. Okay? Kind of getting the hang of it? All right. Why don't you do this one? Fill this chart out by yourself, would you? Think about using those patterns that we just learned. If they have the same sign there, you got negative and negative, just add them together. If one's negative, one's positive, subtract the difference. One's positive, one's negative, subtract the difference. If one is a negative and the other one's a minus, you combine them together. All right. So here's the basic rules. Positive, positive, add them together, put them together. If this one's negative and negative and it's an addition sign, just put them together and you get negative 2. Okay? This goes back to our previous lesson when we talked about absolute value. If you think about the absolute value of 1, absolute value of negative 1, negative 1, so it's both 1 here and 1 there. What's 1 plus 1? It's 2, but it's negative, so it's negative 2. And then with subtracting, negative and a minus really is the same thing. It's combining the two. You've got a negative and a minus, put them down, you're going down 1, puts us at negative 2. Whereas here we got 1 minus negative 1. Remember what we do here? Make the banana plus, and we get 1 plus 1 is 2. Pretty simple, huh? All right. If you've ever climbed up a mountain or if you've done rock climbing, usually you don't go straight up. Most of the time you have to climb up and then go down and then up and then down again and up again until you get to the summit. Well, here's the thought. Here's what your path looked like when you climbed a mountain to get up to the summit. You climbed up 600 feet, down 30, up 300, down 150, and so forth. I want you to write an equation without subtraction that gives you the total number that you climbed. Okay? Use positive and negative numbers and addition rather than actually subtracting the numbers. Okay? What would you get? All right, well, did you use positive numbers for the 600 ups? And the downs, you would use negative numbers. So it would be something like this, 600 plus negative 30 plus 300 and so forth. Here's what the actual equation would look like if you need help. Notice how I did adding a negative is the same thing as subtracting, okay? How could I write the positive? How could I write the plus there? What would I do for plus? Any idea? That's the challenge. Write it with no addition signs. Well, all you do for addition would you be subtracting a negative. So it would be a minus and then negative 300 on each of those. All right, getting the hang of it? Try and simplify these expressions. Work through them. Pause the video, and I'll give you your hints here in just a second. All right. Remember, if this is a negative and this technically is a positive, you just take the difference between the two. Here, you got a negative and a negative, so just add them together. Here, this is negative, that's negative, that's negative. Just add them all together. Here, well, what's 9 minus 5? Do that, and then flip it. Flip that sign. Minus and negative, remember? Banana plus. All right, how'd you do? Here they are. All right, are you able to answer the guiding question now about how are we going to add and subtract integers? All right, well, thanks for joining us. This was Matt with mathsmath.com. Check us out on Facebook at Solving Maths Problems or on Twitter at Maths Math, and enjoy math and rock climbing.